Jonathan, MLG has a very unique and interesting practice area. So tell me your story and how did this all start?
In 2014, everything in my professional life changed. At that point in time, I had been practicing law for just under 20 years, and we had built up a very robust practice representing people in the automotive industry. I grew up around cars, so it was a lot of fun to develop a firm that was in the automotive space, and we represented generally businesses with business disputes and large litigation claims. And it was good, but it was really lacking a real personal connection that I had with what we were doing. And it just didn't have that purpose that really got me excited. It was good, but it wasn't great. And in 2014, I was a journalist for one of the largest legal newspapers in the world. And as part of covering the stories, I was investigating a fraud that General Motors had been committing on the public as it relates to a defect in one of their cars. It was an ignition switch defect. You know, when you turn the keys on back before they had the push button, the keys would flip off as the driver was driving the car. And so you're driving and all of a sudden the car just turns off with no notice. The power brakes don't work, all the lights on the dashboard come on, the steering wheel locks up. And it was a very serious problem. So as I was investigating this, what we uncovered was that General Motors had known about this defect and that they were knowingly building cars and that they had concealed it for 13 years. And so we had published a number of stories. And at that time, one of the most unexpected things happened. I was contacted by a family, the Hare family from Virginia. Sweet man and lady, Gordon and Brenda Hare, who had tragically lost their only son, their only child, Benjamin. So they contacted me and they said that Benjamin was 18 years old and he was driving a GM car. And this happened some years ago, before 2014. And he was driving on a Sunday afternoon down a country road in Virginia and got into a single car accident on a beautiful sunny day. Now, that generally doesn't happen. There was no alcohol, there was no drugs, and Benjamin was just the greatest kid. He was actually an Eagle Scout, and he was a pre-Olympian swimmer, so he was training for the US Olympic team. And they couldn't figure out why this had happened. He was just driving, went off the road, hit a tree, and died on impact. And so they had been calling General Motors for years, asking GM to come out and to investigate this. Please send your engineers out here to find out what happened. This is inexplainable. And GM refused, declined. It told the Hare family that it had no idea. We're terribly sorry for your loss, but we've never heard about anything like this before. And so as we were journalistically investigating this, we found out that that was not true, that GM in fact had known about this for 13 years and that they had been concealing it and knowingly manufacturing these cars. So when the Hare family contacted us, we ended up representing the Hare family and we filed a lawsuit against GM to compensate them for the loss of their son. And as a matter of fact, what was so incredibly tragic about it, they lived in a very rural part of Virginia. And the only way in and out of town was on this one road where their son had passed away. So the mom, Brenda, was heartbroken over the loss, and they were at an age where they couldn't have children anymore. So this was it for them. And every time she would go into town to get a gallon of milk or perhaps a loaf of bread, she'd have to drive by the death site, which was just a mile or so from the house. And it took its toll on Brenda, and she ultimately ended up having a stroke and became half paralyzed. And so the family didn't just lose their son. They lost the mother, well, she's still alive, but they lost her full function. And so they contacted us and we ended up pursuing this case against General Motors. And when you file a lawsuit, you're able to get the internal files from your opponent. And so we got these internal documents in this lawsuit from General Motors. And we were shocked to find that not only had GM known what was going on, but in fact, what we thought was true was very true, that GM had been concealing this, and that it had known about Benjamin's death, and it had known of the deaths of other consumers that were in the hundreds. And knowing this, it allowed those cars to stay out there. It did nothing to issue a recall, and it was completely content raking in profits while people were dying. So we were fortunately able to deliver the Hare family full justice. We were able to restore a sense of right and wrong, at least for a temporary point in time for that family. And from that day, I made it my mantra. It was my mission that it's now personal. And I'm not okay with these big corporate bullies running over people. I'm not okay with the little guy not having a voice. And seeing how many times this family had called General Motors and just pleaded for help, begged for any kind of an answer as to the loss of their son, and being told, sorry, we have no idea what you're talking about, when it was nothing but a bald lie. And that wasn't okay. And it was not something that we were going to stand for. And so the firm that we had built, where we were representing business interests, seemed to be less purposeful. And we wanted from that day forward to make our mission, to make my mission, to hold these manufacturers accountable, to bring them to justice, and to never, never, never give up.